don't be too worried about it. If you can figure it out for the towel emojis, great, but you're such a wonderful supporter. All right, here we go. Hello, towel friends. My name is Grant Smith Ellis. We are done with day 13 of the Karen Reed and John O'Keefe trial. And let me tell you right now, you're going to see some towel friends in the chat agree with what I'm about to say. You do not want to submit yourself to the torment that was 8 hours of Alan Jackson trying to cross a witness in the most circular style I think I have ever seen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it got so bad that I turned into incredulous horse racing announcer towel and started yelling, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's take a look at Hank Brennan's arrival at court to start the day. You can see Mr. Brennan. He's going to arrive. He's going to be walking into court on your screen in just a few seconds. Sorry, I meant to mute the audio for you because he doesn't actually say much. We'll take a listen as he gets to the stairs. It is Hank Brennan himself.
Video is straight. Morning, everybody.
There you go, folks. You saw Hank Brennan's arrival. Now, little did we know, little towels, little did we know that the day would just become absolutely ridiculous right away. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow towels, we're not even going to watch this for the testimony. Bill Reed, Karen's father, you can see in the clip, was seen seated next to a court officer the whole day, ladies and gentlemen, basically. There were reports that Bill Reed had been looking at jurors inappropriately from John DePetro, a reporter, a venerated journalist in the courthouse. But ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't just the court officer sitting next to Bill Reed. Let us take a look what happened just a little bit later. Now keep your eye, hold on. Keep your eye focused on the top here, folks. At 9:39 a.m. And what we're going to do, little towels, is we had a request earlier from folks if we could zoom in. Oh, Kelly Patton became a towel fan. Enjoy your wonderful new towel emojis. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a request if we could zoom in on the video at the top of Bill Reed's interaction with a court officer. We are going to do that now because I am a towel. These are important recaps. These are big moments, and we need to watch. So let us take a look. Let us watch how it unfolded. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Grant Smith Ellis. This was day 13 of the Karen Reed and John O'Keefe retrial in a nutshell. We had a very strange situation. We're going to take a look at it right now. If you look at what happened right as the sidebar was starting at 9:30, around 8:33 a.m. or 9:33 a.m. this morning. Welcome to new member Kelly Patton. Let's take a look. Give it a second for the video to buffer, towel friends. What are we going to see? Take a look. What happens with Mr. Bill Reed? Give it all of 1 second. Wait for the sidebar to start. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, watch what happens. Karen gets up. Watch the bottom feed. Watch the bottom feed, folks. Look at the court officer. The court officer walks over to Mr. and Mrs. Reed. There is then an interaction. It's going to happen in about 10 seconds. This was exclusive on the Towel Cam, youtube.com/Grant Smith Ellis. You can see the court officer almost as if she was saying to the Reed, stop looking over at the jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a moment. It was a towel moment. It was captured right there. Now, the court officer then returns to her place. But look, ladies and gentlemen, the court officer stands, and prevents Mr. Reed from looking over at the jurors. And, ladies and gentlemen, I will say, this only became more intense with time. Now, if you take a look, I'm going to show it to you right here on the bottom of the video. When the court officer eventually does, when the court goes into recess, ladies and gentlemen, during day 13, which happened right after the moment you just saw, look, ladies and gentlemen, the court officer is standing between Bill Reed and the jurors. There was something that happened, ladies and gentlemen. You can see it right there. The video is playing. The court officer not just sitting with Mr. Reed, not just talking to Mr. Reed. That court officer is preventing Mr. Reed from looking over at the jury box, which is directly to Mr. Reed's right. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this was one of the moments of the day. And you could tell all day long the eyes of the world were on Bill Reed, trying to figure out why he was being cornered by the court officer in that manner. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you now further updates from the day. As you can see, Little Towel was doing real-time video editing because that is the type of thing you tune in to see. And now we will scroll up just a little bit further. And what will we see, ladies and gentlemen? We'll see the next update for today, which was Karen Reed's lawyers pulled out an absolutely ridiculous move. I will say, ladies and gentlemen, they pulled out an absolutely ridiculous move. But before we even go there, let's take a look at the moment that we did for honorary towel D Nice's mom. We created a clip of Karen. There you go. Hold on. We created a clip of Karen smiling entirely inappropriately in court. I'll bring it up for you now, towel friends. And that was one of the moments that capped the morning session. And if you're wondering, wasn't there some kind of exam going on, towel? No, yes, but really nothing was going on because Alan Jackson spent so much time pontificating. Now you're going to see it here, ladies and gentlemen. Karen Reed inappropriately smiling. We made the video for honorary towel D Nice's mom, and you all can see it yourself right there, Karen's inappropriate smile. Now, as if that weren't enough, ladies and gentlemen, it got worse. It somehow got worse. Karen Reed's attorneys brought up her affair with Brian Higgins, an affair Karen Reed started unprompted to torment John O'Keefe. Karen Reed lied to Brian Higgins about John O'Keefe hugging a family friend in Aruba a few weeks before Karen started the affair. Karen told Brian Higgins that John had cheated when John had done no such thing. When Karen had admitted on New Year's Eve to the family friend in question, or her sister, that John had not cheated and that John had simply hugged that friend who viewed John as a godfather. Ladies and gentlemen, for some reason, Alan Jackson brought those text messages up, and we even saw the moments where Karen Reed was talking about specifically that Aruba trip, and then Towel Grant Smith Ellis, was able to put together the evidence showing that the previous testimony in the first Karen trial indicates that Karen lied to Brian Higgins about that Aruba incident, which made for one of the most devastating moments of all time, where Alan Jackson used his client's text messages, showed her affair, attempted to get ahead of Hank Brennan in a tactical tit-for-tat after Brennan got ahead of the Reed defense on Michael Proctor's text messages about Reed. And what did it lead to? Ladies and gentlemen, it led to Karen Reed being exposed as a liar, as a controlling high school level flirtatious woman who told Higgins she was single, who blamed John O'Keefe's adopted double orphaned adopted niece and nephew for the breakdown in the relationship between John and Karen. Karen was asked to leave John's home a few days before John was killed, and she wouldn't go. Karen was the one arguing with John in the moments before his death, and Karen tried to cheat on John with his own friend to torment him, an affair that John's friend stopped when he realized what Karen was up to and that Karen was only trying to hurt John. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's watch the moment. Gentlemen, my name is Grant Smith Ellis. As we get ready to return for 2 p.m., more testimony after lunch in the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed trial. Karen Reed's lawyer, Alan Jackson, and her defense team have just made a huge mistake. Karen Reed and her team showed to the jury text messages where in mid-January 2022, just weeks before John O'Keefe's death, Karen Reed induced one of John's friends and started an affair with that friend named Brian Higgins to try to torment John emotionally. Now, Higgins quickly ended the affair when he realized Karen was only using him to hurt John. But ladies and gentlemen, we now have proof that Karen Reed, in those text messages, which her lawyers never should have played for the jury. The only reason her lawyers started playing those for the jury today is because Hank Brennan tactically outmaneuvered Alan Jackson and introduced Michael Proctor's text messages before the defense could do so. So Alan Jackson, I believe, overthought and started introducing Karen's text to get ahead of the affair. But in those texts, ladies and gentlemen, it came out that Karen Reed, in mid-January of 2022, was trying to tell Brian Higgins that John cheated on Karen on December 31st, 2021. just a few weeks earlier on New Year's in Aruba. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to watch the text where Karen says that, but the problem is it was a lie. And it wasn't just that Karen lied to Higgins. 2 weeks earlier, Karen had admitted to people on the Aruba trip that John had just hugged a family friend. So let's watch it. We saw it, ladies and gentlemen. We only have a few minutes before court comes into session. Little Towel shall play the clip for you now.
Are you breaking up or staying together? I don't know. He hooked up with another girl on vacation. I am very close to his niece. It is a very fucked up situation. When was that? And how did you find out he hooked up? I don't want to complicate your situation. We went away for New Year's, the four of us. I put the kids to bed and found him in the lobby of our hotel, all over one of our friends. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It does matter. Did they bang? Does that matter? Sorry, I was just asking. I was just trying to figure shit out. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I won't ask again. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Okay, hear you loud and clear, Karen. Oh, okay. Why are you getting your thing all twisted up over simple questions, Dong? I am not, am I? You're kind of getting defensive.
Oh, Higgins knew, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Higgins knew. And let me show you. We're going to bring it up on the screen right now. Listen to Laura Sullivan, the sister of the woman John hugged, tell the world at Karen's first trial that Karen herself admitted John never cheated. He just hugged the woman.
What, if any, conversation did you have with either of those before the defendant attempted?
Karen grabbed me and she said, hey, I'm sorry. I thought I saw something that I didn't, and I would like to pay for some of your sister's room.
And how did you respond to that?
I said it's absolutely not necessary. Just an apology will do.
And did she persist in wanting to pay for the room?
She did.
And how so?
She just said, I will apologize, but something along the lines of, I want to pay for some of her room. Can I just have her room number? I don't remember if I gave her the room number or not. I don't really know.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Grant Smith-Ellison. If you're wondering why is this such a big deal, during Alan Jackson's Go Nowhere 8-hour cross today of a state police sergeant who used to be a Marine that served on the Presidential Helicopter Squadron Marine 1 out of Quantico. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain to you what just happened. Karen Reed's lawyers brought up text that basically exposed Karen Reed as having cheated on John to torment John by cheating on John with his own friend. John's friend ended the affair quickly after he realized clearly what Karen was up to. But ladies and gentlemen, Karen did that by lying. Karen lied, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're wondering, Grant, how do you know that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, look what I went through and found. I found the sister's testimony from the first trial, ladies and gentlemen, not Laura Sullivan's testimony, but Marietta Sullivan's testimony. And I must say, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to watch it now. I think in some sense, this testimony, it may now have to come in, is even more devastating for Karen Reed. You know how Karen said to Higgins, John cheated on me, etc.? No, ladies and gentlemen, if you missed it during the recap earlier, this is our Day 13 recap. Here's what's going to come out next week or during trial. Let's listen to what actually happened that night. That Karen lied to Brian Higgins. Karen already had told people John wasn't cheating in Aruba. Look at what Karen did. Karen manipulated Higgins, and her own lawyers tried to get ahead of it today. But eventually, the Sullivan sisters, Marietta and Laura, who you just heard from, are on the state's witness list in rebuttal. Hank Brennan said he wasn't going to bring it up unless Reed went into it. She did. Now we're going to hear this testimony. Here's Marietta Sullivan. Remember, this is about Karen Reed's text to Brian Higgins about Aruba. Karen said John cheated on her. Karen was implying all sorts of horrible things. Let's hear what really happened. This is what jurors could hear as soon as next week.
So the elevator gets sent down to the lobby. You walk out with anyone you see when you come out.
So when the elevator opens up, the first person I saw was the attendant standing behind the desk. I didn't see anybody else in the lobby with me until I stepped out. When I stepped out, I looked to my left and I saw Johnny coming in through the first set of outside doors.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, was there any other sort of term that you would use to refer to him?
Johnny or Godfather.
And, Your Honor, I think this may be appropriate.
All right, so folks, I'm going to say again that first instruction I gave you with the last witness, that you're about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by the defendant. Ms. Reed is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictment. So this witness's testimony may not and must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she may have a propensity to commit the crimes with which she's been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts that you'll hear about as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here. But you may consider the act solely on the limited issue of the defendant's state of mind and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed these acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's been charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, motive, and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe. And for the same findings that I made at sidebar.
Proceed, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thanks. So you walk out of the elevator, you're by yourself, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you see Mr. O'Keefe. Could you see where Mr. O'Keefe was in relation to the lobby or where he was coming from?
He was coming from the outside doors into the lobby.
Is that where the pool bar is located?
Opposite side.
Opposite.
Yes.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, did you see with him initially?
Nobody with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing or how was he acting sort of when he came?
So he sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" But yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
And did you go over to him at that point?
I did. I went up to him and I gave him a hug.
And what happened then?
I pulled back. He was glassy-eyed, looking above me. We never made eye contact. He was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, "Where are you going?" assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet us. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a bank of rooms to our right. And I said, "Well, you should go that way." And I stepped back and I guided him toward the area that he was going.
Now, as far as the bank of rooms to the right, you indicated that you were familiar or aware of where Mr. O'Keefe was and where the children were. Is that correct?
I know they were on the first floor. I'm not 100% positive as to where exactly their rooms were.
And if you know, did you know whether or not that Mr. O'Keefe was staying in the same room as Patrick and Kaylee at that point?
I didn't know if they were staying in the same room or not, no.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar when I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister."
And what happened then?
When I came back around the corner, I said, after Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go fuck myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," and walked away.
And And just to be clear, when you say Ms. Reed, this is someone that you became familiar with as the trip went along?
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. I just had seen her sitting by the side of the pool when I had been talking to Johnny earlier in the day.
And the person you know to be Ms. Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
Sure, she's in a black and white checkered blazer. She's 2 people in from you.
Does that record reflect identification of anybody? With this?
Yes.
Thank you. As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the defendants beyond the yelling? What, if anything, did you observe as far as her demeanor or how she was acting at the time that this interaction was going on?
She was just very loud. She very, energetically screamed for me to go fuck myself. She was waving her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down. And after I said, yeah, fuck you too, I went out to the pool bar, so I didn't see much after that.
And could you hear anything as far as when you were walking out to the pool bar, as far as any other conversation between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe?
Not after that first time, no.
You go back to you go out to the pool bar, and who, if anyone, did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
I'll allow this part.
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend? And she looked at me and said, Karen? And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks.
Now, following that, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed later on that evening?
I did not see them, no.
And when was the next time that you did see?
I saw them briefly on the 2nd, which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
And when you say you briefly saw them, about, can you describe them?
So we had all rented the cabanas. Each family had one or they were sharing one. I was sharing one with my family down at the end. We got about halfway through the day and realized that their family cabana was still empty. So I saw them about halfway through the day when they did come to the cabana, and I briefly saw Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe at the pool, the island bar that same day, but there was no conversation.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and...
Ladies and gentlemen, Karen never apologized. You heard it from Marietta Sullivan, the testimony that's going to have to come in now. Karen has a history of this kind of lying, and Hank Brennan's going to expose it. My name is Grant Smith Ellis. We only have a few more clips to review how this day went for Karen Reed. Alan Jackson went nowhere on cross. Bill Reed, Karen's father, was monitored by court staff. And I am going to show you, ladies and gentlemen, the moment that Alan Jackson induced a state police officer on cross to just humiliate his own client and say that the state police officer thought Karen Reed was trying to start an affair with Brian Higgins, including begging Higgins for intercourse just because Karen was trying to torment John. Let's listen.
Witty stuff like that, talking about banging and hooking up.
What word would you use to describe them if not flirtatious?
The totality of the conversation?
Sure. Let's start there.
My opinion is that it's a angry girlfriend trying to set up a hookup to her John.
To her jump?
To her John.
To her John.
Yeah.
Would you consider the response?
Ladies and gentlemen, now let's listen to the next part. Trooper Buchanan absolutely dominated Alan Jackson. This was the highlight. 8 hours, and it was the witness who came out making Alan Jackson and his client look like a fool.
Yeah.
For what happened on New Year's Eve?
Yes.
Okay. When you say revenge, you don't mean physical revenge.
Well, emotional revenge. She's trying to hook up with Higgins and then hurt John by cheating on him.
And in fact,
you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Karen Reed was trying to hook up with Brian Higgins to emotionally hurt John O'Keefe. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it was just a horrible day for Karen Reed in every sense of the term. Now, my name is Grant Smith Ellis. There is far more evidence to come. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Jackson got baited by Hank Brennan. Hank Brennan yesterday introduced Michael Proctor's text messages to get ahead of the defense. Alan Jackson outthought himself today, and instead of geniusly replying to Hank Brennan, Alan Jackson tried to get ahead of Brennan on Karen Reed's affair. And instead of looking good, Alan Jackson for 8 hours bored the entire Karen Reed and John O'Keefe retrial world, set a national television audience into delirium to the point where they were turning off their sound so they only had to watch captions and not listen to him, and ended the day with a highlight where the witness talked about Karen Reed emotionally tormenting John O'Keefe by cheating on John with John's own friend, who then quickly ended the affair when he realized what Karen was doing, because he didn't want to hurt John. Ladies and gentlemen, it was just it almost seemed like Alan Jackson was self-sabotaging. He overthought the reply to Brennan. He tried to get ahead of the text messages, and he only hurt his own client. Now listen, my name's Grant Smith Ellis. If you've been watching Towel Stream, youtube.com/Grant Smith Ellis, you know this is the only place you can watch the Karen Cam. Every angle, Bill Reed, Janet Reed, the court officer standing between Bill Reed and the jury. These pictures only exist because of your support of Towel Stream and the work the Towel Universe is doing to bind itself so tightly together, making an interwoven fabric that defies historical limits and creates a mosaic of the most beautiful order at youtube.com/at Grant Smith Ellis. And then you'll get to hear me talk like horse racing announcer Towel, and you'll learn why they call me Grant, Howard Cosell, David Attenborough, Towel Smith Ellis. Yes, tune in next Monday. It's going to be May 12th at 10 a.m. Unless we come into session early, I'll let you know. 10 a.m. I will be live at 7:30 as always. We get a special 2.5 hours together, ladies and gentlemen, on Monday. That means we'll have all sorts of reviews. We will have things to talk about. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be together again at 7:30. This is just the end of the clip. I'm going to go talk to the Towel friends. youtube.com/at Grant Smith Ellis. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. It'll be a celebratory moment. Help us make the world a better place, one small act of service at the time. Help us find people to help. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what makes Towel feel like he's living up to his vocation on this earth, or the Towel's eudaimonia, as the Greeks might say. It might be ancient Greek, or summum bonum in the Latin. I'm ending this clip. Enjoy the Day 13 recap. I will see you on Monday, bright and early. I'm going to go say hi to the Towel friends. Ladies and gentlemen, if you missed it, we have had one more update in Day 13 of the Karen Reed and John O'Keefe trial. Yes, venerated reporter Towel, Luisa Ramirez, has sent along this clip from Towel Stream earlier. And look what you can see, ladies and gentlemen, during a question about Karen Reed's affair. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Karen Reed started an affair with John O'Keefe's friend to torment him, as you heard in the recap. And then she starts flipping off the camera.
But I take it as you stopped responding to my text messages.
Do you take that, do you interpret that, or did you interpret that as a positive or a negative comment? You ghosted me.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it was bad news for Karen Reed. That's how we will end this recap.